Howdy folks, welcome back. Okay, I have not touched sketching form in some time now. So you'll see that the drawing on my paper is half finished for a reason. So it's broken up into three spots. You have this character that I drew where the top it has scales, there's shading, there's some detail in there. You can really see what's going on. And then you have the part of the head where there is some shading, like a coating of graphite that's a little darker, but there's no scales on top of it yet. And then, as we move down here, it's mostly outline, okay, with very, very subtle hints of shading, even in one direction. This was intentional. So grab your sketchbooks, grab your pencils, and try to draw along with me, regardless of the subject matter. You could be drawing a person, a car, or whatever. I'm going to teach you how to bring form out from a flat 2D surface. All right, the first mistake everybody makes that wishes they could do better in form is they jump into this stuff too quickly, which is detail. This comes later. This should come last. You have to get that coating of graphite down so that any details that you put down, there will be value and shading in between all of the details. You won't be forced to go back in and shade in between everything. All right, so sharpen your pencil. Keep that sharp at all times. I'm using a 4B. I prefer the Bs because you can get dark, medium, and light lines with them. And what I'm doing is I'm keeping the strokes very close together, and I'm moving across the entire subject until it's done. So that means all the way to the tip. Okay, and then my arm, because everybody is different that draws. Okay, every single one of you listening right now has a comfortable position that you hold your arm in to give you the best lines possible. I encourage you to keep the angle of your arm, but you're going to take your sketchbook and tilt it so that you can apply the same good lines that you did before, but in a different direction. Keep the strokes close together. The reason you're keeping them close together is because it fills in more of the gaps during shading process. Okay, once you start doing that, in a minimum of 3 different passes, you can start to see a significant improvement and a really nice layer of graphite on here. Now, if you're me, who obsesses about this stuff, I will probably do, I don't know, 7 to 10 different passes just to start. And the reason I do that is because I want to make sure that every single little area that I have on here is covered for me. So that when I go back in and I'm going, hey, I want to put down maybe some skin wrinkles here or whatever, I can put down a wrinkle and know that there's shading already around it. I don't have to go back in and be like, okay, I got to get light shading around that. That's ridiculous. That's why younger artists and aspiring artists like fall into that trap of details. And then what happens is you end up putting details on something and there's no form underneath it. Okay, so now that we're getting a nice coating, we ain't done yet. So we are going to put some shading on the under part of the jaw. So this part is just filling in some gaps that I was kind of feeling a little antsy about. I get antsy and nervous a lot and anxious whenever there are areas in my drawings where I know it should be better, but I skipped it. So I got to go back and do it because, you know, I obsess about that and that's the way I am. I know that most of you probably are too, which is why you're still listening to me talk about details. See how I just jump to the scales? That's what I do. I just jump to little areas like this and be like, okay, I'm going to go into that little area. Oh, I got to go back into shading. So let's get back into it. All right. This has a pretty nice shading or a pretty nice coating. I'm still not satisfied. So I'm going to turn my sketchbook again, making sure it's in focus. Now, the way I'm physically holding my pencil, my pinky over here is guiding my palm. I'm keeping the palm off of the page. I don't want to be heavy-handed. And I'm holding the pencil at the butt end of it, way back here. So I'm letting like 3/4 of the pencil just flow freely. And this allows me to control it. So I'm doing small little lines, and then I'm widening it up, and I'm making sure that each stroke that goes back and forth is close together. So you want that smooth. You don't want to have to rely on a blending stick or eraser or anything to shape. You want to do it with the actual pencil. No offense to anybody that uses those tools. That's totally fine. To each their own. Let's keep those together. There we go. Now, let's start bringing the form out. Look up here at the cheek. See how there's a slight shadow underneath that cheek? If I were to take that shadow away, it would just be scales and the entire side of the face would be flat. What I want you guys to do is, if you're drawing a creature, drawing a character, weapon, or whatever, look at the spots on your creature where you know there's a bony landmark, like a protruding jawbone or layers of fat that are collecting around the mouth or the wrinkles or whatever. I see one immediately. It's this part. There's a underlying muscle right inside there. I kind of hinted at it with this line, but I don't want to get any darker with that line. That is going to be a very important form line that I'm going to use. I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to very lightly start to layer on shadow directly over top of that line. Okay, so the reason you want to draw the lines, the original lines, lightly is because when you start putting the value down, they're going to end up being the same exact tone as that line. So then you don't have to worry about erasing the line. It's already being blended into the drawing. This is why outlining your work isn't good if you want realism. And there's nothing wrong with outlining it if you're going for the cartoony / cell shading look. But if you want realistic shapes, keep the outlines out of it. Okay, and then you're going to go back in. You see how I turned the sketchbook again, just like I did taking the graphite all the way across. Now you can start to see that this area is getting a little darker, and we are nowhere near done. So what I want to do now is turn it, and I'm going to look at the edges of that dark blotch, and I'm going to fade that out by lightly shading in on the edges of that. It takes patience, everybody. This is a true test of patience. You get used to it after a while. Once you start seeing good results from doing this, it's going to make you want to become more patient. You know, we live in the microwave generation. We want to see everything instantly. There we go. You see that? Okay, this is pass number, 3? Just to blend that in. This is where patience comes in. You might have to shift the grip of your pencil too. Just so you personally get a comfortable line. Because remember, everybody listening right now and drawing along with me, you all draw differently. So don't feel ashamed if you have to twist your sketchbook 39 different ways. I don't care. Whatever gets you a good result. Now, the form that's starting to show is pretty big. That's a big jaw muscle right there. That's awesome. That's what I want. I can almost turn this. Oh, it'll hit my desk post, so I don't want to do that. Let's turn it this way and try to get a nice angle right under here. So this is where that muscle would show up. And then the shadow of the under part of the jaw right there. So I'm going back over everything that I just blended, and I'm making sure that I don't press harder. Don't press harder. Just keep the same pressure and just blend it in with whatever you have around it. Now, hopefully you see the importance of when I first started, I shaded across the entire jaw. Now you have something to shade into. This is where realistic forms can really come out. Because your foundation, it's already laid for you. Foundation as in the coating of graphite that you put down. Now sometimes you're going to get areas where it still doesn't look smooth. That's okay. What you want to do is you want to keep layering on, keep the pencil strokes close, and just fill it back and forth until it starts to take the blotches away. The other thing is, it actually adds a layer of realism to the creature, because that imperfection of the skin that I see here, I mean, that could be really neat for some scales and wrinkles and stuff. Maybe I want that there. Like, who knows? So now I have to think about another spot where a shadow could exist, and there's definitely one in the crease of the mouth. Okay, so I'm just going to run my pencil across the crease. That crease is pretty dark, so any shading that I put across that isn't as dark as the crease, so it won't ruin it. This is how you can play on values. You see what one value looks like to the other value, and you can see if you're going to ruin it or not. So for example, I can add in some really, really dark darks right in here where the lips touch, and it's not going to ruin anything else because I know that's where shadow is existing. Okay, I want to show you a really cool trick. Those of you that know me know what I'm about to do with this black Prismacolor. Those of you that see me for the first time, take the black Prismacolor. It's wax based. Okay, this is not graphite. And you're going to hold it lightly like this, and you're going to run it across the graphite that you just sketched. Keep the strokes nice and slow and keep them as close together as possible. You're going to run across everything. What this does is it helps keep the graphite down so it does not smear it, but two, it offers a completely new, different type of texture. So it's going to cover different gaps in the paper than a graphite pencil normally would. Okay, and then next, right in here in the crease of the mouth, I'm just going to put some black Prismacolor, and it's going to be a rougher texture. It's like, let's say you're making a creature right now and it has some rough skin. Great. This is going to be really helpful for it. Now I got to be careful with the black Prismacolor because at the end of each stroke, you're going to need to take the graphite again, and you're going to need to blend the edges of it back into the rest of your drawing. So they play off one another. Now, in that direction, I wasn't really happy with how the strokes are turning out, so I'm just going to turn the page again, and I'm going to go almost vertically. Let's go a little farther. There we go. So now it's covering different types of gaps in the paper texture that the black Prismacolor couldn't touch. And if you keep layering those on, and they play off one another, you're going to have some really awesome textures. Okay, so here's another really cool part that most people don't do, and that is I'm going to use the tone of the paper as a highlight. And I kind of already did that with the form coming out of this jaw. You see how there's like a light bulbous shape right here? That's where the muscle is sitting and the fat tissue and everything. I'm going to outline bigger scales. But I want you all to realize something. The scales that you draw in places like that need to follow the contours of the creature's shape. Don't just draw the scales flat on in 2D, otherwise it won't look like form is existing. The whole point of us doing these form exercises, especially with characters and creatures and such, is that you want the creature to feel like it's living in an atmosphere on a 2D surface. Okay, like this sketch up here, this is another creature. There's like two huge shapes, a gun on its head and some eyes and stuff. There's a reason why this one is lighter in the background than this one. It's because this is, fading off with mist, with fog. It looks like it lives and breathes within this page. So you want your stuff to look like it's living and breathing in your page. Okay, so the scales that I'm putting on here, if there's a big fat area or just a bigger area, usually those get the bigger scales. And as you move into places that need to to articulate more, the scales are smaller because it's more flexible that way. If you don't believe me, just Google red iguana. Like, the face on the red iguana hasn't changed in millions and millions of years. It's a dinosaur, basically. Look at a Komodo dragon. Look at a Gila monster. There's so many different reptiles that we can look at where it does this. And like little gaps in here. Notice how I'm just taking my pencil and I'm pushing directly down because I can use the sharp tip of my pencil a little bit more. I might darken the crease of the mouth too. All right, so now what's happening is that we got this big area, and I'm still going to use bigger scales. Maybe right in the back. I'm not making them too dark yet, but I am bending the scales to fit the shape of the jaw. Because remember, the muscle is right down here, and you got that little shadow, so I'm going to flatten off those scales, make them look like they're, try to illustrate this with my pencil. It looks like they're coming out and then back. So I want to make those a little smaller down there and then larger as they come up this jaw. There we go. Okay, so it's smaller down here where it's about to come out at us, and then as it's coming out at us, it's getting bigger and bigger until we get to the, it's like the highest peak of that round shape. Okay, now here's another really cool trick. If you really want to make it come out at us, you darken up the corners of the scales inside there, and you fade off that dark color like this, but only do it at the highest point. Highest point as in the fat and the round shape coming out at us, okay? Nothing in here. You can fade those off because it's atmosphere. Like, we don't need to see every single little detail. But what we do need to see is, you know, make sure that bulbous shape comes out at us. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's keep going. So this jaw, it probably needs just a thin outline of where the bottom of the jaw is, because this is the throat. Okay, so now I know where that bottom of the jaw is, and I'm just going to shade in a slightly darker outline. I would eventually fade this up into the jaw again. But at least we know where the bottom of the jaw is. And now, guess what? We can look at this area. So based on the muscles and based on the skull, you know, the muscles need to travel most of that chin all the way up here. So you can see that dark blotch that just happened. You know the drill. You know what I'm about to say. Turn the sketchbook like this, and then you're going to fade that off. Right, like this. I'm going in a different direction. I'm very lightly applying circular motions. This helps cover shading and cover the strokes that I previously missed. I'm going to go back up here. Oops, I accidentally pushed a little too hard there. There we go. And now I'm going to go across. So this is what, pass number 4? I'm assuming. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I lose count. I'm at the point now where I do so many passes, I just see if it looks good. If it doesn't look good yet, then I just don't do it anymore. I'll stop the passes. Okay, so like right in here at the mouth crease, I'm going to have to put some scales that are going to be rolling upwards because, you know, it's probably the lip. So that's probably a good indication of, hey, let's put some scales rolling outwards down the jaw right here. And then I'm going to take my black Prismacolor and I'll just go right back in here because the black Prismacolor just offers a really awesome dark. Like, no, you would probably have to have an 8B, almost a charcoal pencil, to show up right there. And I don't want to use one of those. And inside the little scales right here, I can probably do that. There we go. That's really showing up well. Okay. I hope everybody is happy with this and you're learning something. You know, oh, by the way, I have to keep the material different. So I'm not going to put any more values really on the horn coming out, except maybe right here, some tiny, tiny little circles. There's going to be some broken skin, kind of like your cuticle, you know. But over here would get the majority of the shading because this is bone. Okay, so that's growing out of there. Okay, and then I'm just going to start putting bigger scales on the parts that are coming out at us the most. Also, look, nature's random. Nature's very random, but at the same time, nature is also symmetrical. So it does look kind of cool every now and then if you put some intelligently designed scales. It looks like it's supposed to follow a pattern down the creature's skin. Would you call it skin? No, scales. There we go, we can do that. Now I'll probably have to go back in here and just take the tip of this pencil and put some tiny little dark corners in the scales so that we know there's separation there. Yeah, right like that. So in places like this where the shadow could be casting on the surface of the bottom jaw, yeah, that definitely needs some more detail. Like right in here, I'll make it bigger and just random bigger ones. This kind of looks like a spine right there. Let's just put that in. Yeah. Okay, that looks kind of cool. Now here, this is where the skin starts to break up and it's going to meet that horn. So if this happens, spend more time applying values to wrinkles and folded skin than scales. So I would stop the scales at this point and just start lightly putting in very thick folds of skin. Just small little circles so you know that the shading is smooth. Okay, so I'm making this up as I go. I'm not looking at a rhino reference right now or anything with a horn. I'm just looking at it based on the contours of what's going on with my creature. So I know that there's some skin that needs to be broken up right here and maybe some broken material and, you know, like the material on a rhino horn is actually the same material as its fingernails and toenails. Maybe I can take that design from nature and put it into my creature. Okay, now we are talking. This is when it starts to get a lot of fun, or really fun, because the layering is really bringing out the forms now. And when you guys start your drawings, it could probably be a little discouraging, especially if you don't think you're good at shading and you don't know how to bring out the forms yet. It just takes time in order to build all of this up. Okay, I showed you the 3 stages. I showed you the scales at first, I showed you the value laying, and I showed you the outline. Now you know how all of these things play together if you just take the time to lay on that first coating of graphite. That very first layer that I run across that shape, that's the most important part. Now notice how I did not touch the bottom of this jaw. There's a reason. This is a very important section of this drawing because the cast shadow that this head is going to have, it's going to really make this creature pop off of the page. Yeah, sure, I have some subtle shading and details up here. You know, like the cheek that's coming out at us, I put some shadow underneath. That muscle that's coming out of the strong jaw. But really, if this creature is lit from above, there's going to be a pretty important shadow down here, especially a core shadow on the horn, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, and actually, let's just do the horn core shadow right now. Since the horn already has a lot of detail on it, and other than some little war-torn nicks and maybe some fight scratches, I don't really need to add much to it. So I'm just going to look at the rounded part where the core shadow would exist. Those of you that have taken foundation drawing, you know exactly what this is, especially if you've rendered cylinders and cones. You know about the core shadow on rounded parts. Now this thing isn't perfectly rounded, there's some flat spots on here, so I need to take into account of this thing not being a perfect cone. It's like a bent cone. But notice how the top of this line is actually darker than what's fading off underneath it. There's a reason for that. Okay, the core shadow's strongest part is where it's the darkest right here. Okay, because the bottom of this horn has bounce light coming from its ground. Okay, and I don't need to put anything else on the tip. I'm happy with that. But out here, it needs a core shadow that's a little bit more spread apart, because the material of the horn is spreading apart. And I need to be careful with this. I don't want to go overboard, so I'm not going to press any harder than that in this section. What I am going to do is press a little harder right here. Okay, because the tip that it's going to, it's a little bit more fine-tuned. Okay, it's also turning a different direction. It's kind of wrapping towards the center of the jaw. This one is flattening out. So the reflection is more dispersed around the edges. You're still going to get a core shadow down here, but here's what we need to do before that even happens. We are going to lay several directions of graphite across this neck, and then we're going to layer all of that up so that we can then put black Prismacolor over top of everything. Let's turn it again. Hopefully this is helping you. I'm going in depth as much as I can. I mean, this is how I've been drawing for years, and most of it is trial and error, especially the shading technique where I go in different directions here. I mean, I'm not the only one on earth that does it. I'm just saying, for me personally, it took me a while to figure it out, because I don't use blending 6, and I know there are other methods to have really nice shading. You know, take a soft cloth, get some graphite powder. Those of you fine artists, you know exactly what that is. Offer some awesome techniques going on there. There we go. You know what's happening? Hold on a second. I have words written under here, and it looks like the words are coming. Oh my gosh. That's why it's not smooth right there. Okay, well, whatever I wrote underneath here, it's adding a texture that I did not plan. It's kind of cool. So that was an unexpected happy accident. So let's go in this direction. Notice how I'm not pushing harder. I'm just going over what I previously put down. There we go. And this angle. See what we can do here. Okay, I think I went at this angle already. I can't quite remember, because I'm on pass, I don't know, 407. Okay, black Prismacolor. Now, I got a little disclaimer. When you put a black Prismacolor down, it's not coming up, because it's wax, and you're mixing it in with graphite. Not only does it help the graphite stay down, it doesn't really smear at all unless you press really hard, and it really bites the paper. So I'm going to put one coating across there over everything that I just drew, and I don't worry about ruining what I just drew, because I'm not pressing harder than what the graphite shows over on this jaw. So then I know I won't ruin it. I have to push harder in order for those details to disappear. They're not going to do that. Let's go. Let's put in that core shadow. So I'm going to go under here. I never even gave the reason of why I'm being so subtle with this. The skin that's hanging off the bottom of this jaw, this character is not ripped, okay? He's not Ronnie Coleman. It's subtle skin. It's a subtle shift. It's kind of like your jawline connecting to your glands on the side of your throat, connecting to your trachea, connecting to your side of your neck. There's a subtle shadow there, okay? And you'll even see it in sunlight where it's not super chiseled. There is values spreading across your jaw. That's what I want to show. So lightly, I'm going to put in some darker lines running across the entire bottom of this jaw. I'm going to go all the way over to the end of the skin. I'm going to go back. I'm actually doing small circles or ovals. Okay, so let's say you did this, but the edges of that black Prismacolor, it looks way different than the graphite. Okay, well, you could do two things. You can take the graphite and blend it into it, or you could just spread out that black Prismacolor until it takes up a larger area. Very lightly fade it off, and then you come in with your pencil and you start going over the black Prismacolor with the pencil. Lightly. Patience, patience, patience. This is where patience comes in. You can see how the edge of the throat and the skin hanging down, I'm losing it. Please don't think it's ever gone. You're going to come back to that point and refine it if necessary. We're layering. Remember that. We're layering until it gets to the details. I'm going to change the direction and I'm going to keep the strokes close together. And notice how I don't care that the strokes are going past the throat. I don't care. I can always fix that later. I'm going to go back over this at a different direction. And what that does is it starts to fade off the edges of the black Prismacolor. I'm going to go with black Prismacolor again, directly over that. But this is when it gets darker. You had to lay that first coating in there. Remember how I said that shadow is going to be pretty strong? I'm going to start light, okay, and I'm at an angle. I'm going to push harder and harder and harder with that shadow running across that jaw. And I'm going to fade it back off at the beginning of that horn. Now, this is going to show up pretty well, and it's going to be a harsh edge on the top and the bottom. Take your pencil and put tiny little circles at the end of that. And what you're going to do is you're going to release the pressure of those circles as you move down the surface. See that? It's back and forth, small ovals. And bingo. We just blended it in with the throat. So you just do that across the whole thing. Small circles. And then that sharp edge is eventually going to disappear and it's going to go back into the throat. There you go. It's gone. Now I don't want this harsh edge right up here. So I'm just going to do a similar movement, but not as big. I'm just going to subtly, is that a word? Yeah. I'm just going to put very subtle marks going back up the side of the jaw. There we go. Okay. Now we got a core shadow in there. Now we have to think, what part of this jaw is sticking out the most? Probably right here. Okay, so there's going to be some darkness. I can outline this because I know that shadow is going to be pretty harsh. Now I'm going to take this pencil and I'm going to put some small circles in there and fade it up into here, and I'm going to go back down. I'm going to go back up. I'm going to go a different direction. You don't have to do circles again, but you just need to go back over it. Okay, now it looks good. I can probably get a little darker right in here. This part of the jaw is the darkest of the dark. That's the part where if it's lit from above, there isn't even any bounce light that's going to get to that spot. So now what I want to do is I want to take my graphite pencil and I'm going to go over every single thing that I just did. Lightly, and I'm going to start filling in the gaps that the black Prismacolor missed. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going like this. Very, very subtle marks. And now you can start to see everything becoming smoother. Okay, so if you have stuck around, hopefully that you have picked up some good shading techniques. So now I'm going in and I'm just putting in some darks in the spots where I knew we kind of lost some values there. Some of the atmospheric perspective will take care of this. You know, we don't want to show off everything. We just want to show off specific details and let the viewer fill in the rest. Like, you guys already know what the face looks like. I don't need to put in every single detail everywhere else because you can fill in the gap with your own mind. I might put in some smaller ones, maybe like out here, just to kind of show like, hey, this is how small the scales are near the lips. Is it necessary to put in the rest over there? No. But what I do need to do is I need to fill in some of these areas lost to help with the the silhouette of it. So like all of those strokes that I went past the skin with that I didn't care about before, I'm actually just going to use that. I'm just going to turn that into small little neck, like skin horns. They're asymmetrical too, and they're chaotic, which is good because nature's chaotic. And I'm just going to kind of place those smaller details in here. There we go. And I might go over everything again with 4 or 5 more passes because I'm obsessive and that's what I do. You know, up here I can put in some details kind of fading off, maybe a small ear hole. Hey, why not? Okay, it's got it here, right? All right, so hopefully you liked the lesson today. It was really in depth about bringing in form and also shading. If you got a kick out of it, if you liked it, comment below, tell me what you're working on. I do run a private mentorship if you want to learn how to do this, or if you want to learn how to draw cubes, cones, cylinders, and spheres. I take all skill levels. Just email me at bobbyrebholds@gmail.com. Check the pinned comment and the links in the description. You are incredibly welcome to join our Discord, where we have tons of like-minded individuals, over 6,000 members now. And everybody just keeps learning and showing us their art. What would you name it? I don't know. He kind of looks like a Larry to me. And if it's a female, what would her name be? Give me a male and a female version name for this. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I had a blast. Peace. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Today's lesson is about asking yourself why my creature design sucks. So if you're constantly trying to design creatures, but something just isn't clicking. Either the anatomy is off, or the art itself isn't really well executed. It could boil down to you not putting in the time to actually design out what your intent is. So what I'm doing here is just hitting you right away with an image of a creature that I designed, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, called the Doomer Hoblin. Don't ask me how I came up with that name. I don't know. I think I was just throwing a bunch of names together. But I'm going to go through some different scenarios on why I have small notes everywhere, why I position the creature the way I did in the sketchbook. If you're wondering what size sketchbook this is, it's 8.5 by 11 on Moleskine. Moleskine has a slightly skewed version of 8.5 by 11. It's like, I don't know, 8 by 11.5, something like that. And then what I'll do is I'll show you some more images, if I can just rotate my sketchbook here, of just different ways that I like to plan out my thumbnail sketches, how quickly I do it, etc. Okay, so if you want to draw along with me, great. I'm not going to be doing any drawing in this particular lesson. If you're interested in watching me draw, I have over 200 videos and counting on my channel about drawing and shading and stuff like that. So without further ado, so when I got into this creature design on this page, I knew in my head that I wanted something with a shell. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I started to combine some animals that I thought were kind of freaky. So a snapping turtle, definitely 1. A turtle with spider legs, that's 2. And 3, actually I combined 4 animals. I know it was a water buffalo, and then last but not least, if you can figure out what kind of head that is before I'm about to say it, then you definitely know your animals. All right, it is a camel spider. And if I switch back here, I think I have some other pages where, oh, maybe I don't. I just have a bunch of drawings in there. I think I have some camel spider head sketches in here somewhere. Maybe I'll go look for them. But anyway, I wanted to combine at least 3 animals to give me a good foundation for the design. So that could be design trick number 1 that you all could use so your creature designs don't suck anymore. Stop trying to invent every single thing from your head, because you are essentially pulling images that you have studied already from the real world, from games, movies, and then you're mixing the thoughts together to invent your own creature. Well, if you don't study enough anatomy, you can't really design anything on the fly like you hope to. That's why all your creatures suck. They just all look the same. They all look stiff. The joints look bad. You don't know muscles, you don't know joints, so you just start putting lumps in there, hoping for the best. All right, now, being a creature designer does have its advantages when you're kind of stretching what exists. So for example, if I looked at a spider, which I looked at a tarantula, okay, and I looked at the feet, but I also knew that the legs on a tarantula do not have exoskeletons. So that was my creative freedom. I just started putting lumps and other shapes and shadows to form that crustacean chitinous look. Okay, but the overall shape, I paid attention to several spider species. All right, and then for the head here, you have some creative freedom when you do creature design, so you can bend the rules, I guess you could say. So it's no different than going to figure drawing class and then being a character designer for a game where the characters are their body proportions are skewed, or not how humans usually look. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about. So we're talking about combining animals. The second thing is this page right here. All right, are you doing this, or are you just blindly drawing, hoping for the best? Now, thumbnail sketching is a very important part of concept art in general. Okay, not just with characters, not just with creatures, but props, environments, weapons, armor, helmets, faces, you name it, you got to do this. Now, I have dozens of videos on my channel, if you would like to go back and watch them too, where I discuss sketching quickly for thumbnails, scribbling, getting your thoughts out without thinking too hard, etc. And notice how I'm keeping my ideas close to my illustration over here. I try to eliminate as much stress as I can when I draw, okay, which is bringing me to the next point. You probably suck at creature design because you're stressing yourself out too much. And it's not that you're actually a bad artist. You could technically execute pretty well, probably. Your shading is decent, your line work is decent, but you're so stressed out about making things perfect that you're not taking a step back and realizing this is not a sprint. You're going to be so much better off in your portfolio, regardless of what you're designing, if you put your thoughts on paper first. So anytime that I have a project that I want to start, or I'm mentoring somebody, I tell them, write what you want down. Look at the notes that I put here. I put all these notes down, not only for myself, like for here, trap jaw for hooking prey, and then down here, this extra arm, small arms for grabbing prey close to ground. Everything has a purpose. Fangs protruding from poison sacs, horns used for defense, spikes on head for protection, and then over here, armored pronotum, and then armored elytron, and then here, hook arms for defense, grabbing prey, and movement along rough terrain. Okay, so let's say this thing needs to crawl, and it's trying to get up a very, very steep cliff. Okay, maybe it needs some extra arms underneath itself to help that. Now, as you can notice, there's a little dude over here. Okay, it's always important to show scale when you're doing creature design. One of the most important lessons I learned back in university is when you present. Okay, let's say you guys are trying to get a job in the industry. When you present your work, you want all the questions answered for a potential employer before they even meet you, because they have to sift through hundreds of portfolios, literally per day. And if your work sucks and they don't understand what your intent is, you don't have a purpose, you have a purpose, but your portfolio doesn't have a direction, they're going to look at it and in 6 seconds make a judgment and go, this sucks. And they're going to toss it, and then they're going to go to the next candidate. So you need to hit them right away with your best work, or something that proves that you can do the job that you are trying to get hired for. So if an employer looks, or writes down in their job description, we need this, and this. If your portfolio shows that right away, you're proving that you're already doing the job you're applying for. If you don't do that, they're only going to hire you for things that they directly see. It doesn't matter if you say you can do it. What matters is you're actually showing you can do it. Okay, there's people that talk and there's people that do. So you have to remember that. Okay, so the other things that think about of why your creatures suck is that you don't know what type of creature that you want to invent. You're just hoping that it looks cool and you're starting to add things to it. Now, I will say that you can hit a home run every now and then by doing that, and that's, totally plausible. I've done it, but you at least need to have some kind of idea. Okay? So let's just travel through the sketchbook real quick, and I'm going to show you another one. All right, so I think the focus should be on this. This creature is called the Pemagort. So the Pemagort is part of my Ecor 117 personal project. I've been working on it for a long time now. But you can see here I have head design, I have scale, I have a lot of notes so that when I look at this creature from head to toe, each body part has a purpose. I feel better about it. My potential client may feel better about it if it's a freelancing project. And overall, you're telling a story without having to voice the story. Okay, if you can hang something on the wall, well, hypothetically, or digitally show the whole story of your character or creature or prop without you having to explain everything, then you know you're successful. All right, so some notes that I gave this creature: fully developed head plate, extra eye used for ultra keen depth perception, and the adult has an elongated chin. I even went as far as to explain why the chins are spiked. Okay, up here, I don't know, you guys probably can't see this because it's a little too small. Special appendages used for mating and to ward off predators. All right. This right here, instead of just a random thing hanging down, it's an antenna that drags across the ground due to poor eyesight. So this thing really can't see well. So this antenna drags across the ground because it can't see down there very well. So I gave it a handicap. All right, so 3 things to think about right away for this creature. It's an omnivore, it's agile, and it's peaceful. So this isn't a mean creature. Rear claws for support. And then I gave myself some extra notes about the height. So it's 17 feet tall. It weighs 625 pounds. The species is a Pemagort, and the diet is an omnivore. And I went as far as to draw a cool little scene of it standing in here. Okay, another thing to think about if you don't want your creatures to suck is that ask yourself, how would a human interact with your creature in a game or movie? Because those are typically the 2 places where you see creature design, games and movies. Well, the 2 biggest places. So for example, this creature is called the Hombik, and this is probably one of the favorite ones that I designed. Let me try to tilt this up a little bit so you can see. Move it back a little. So the Hombik is special in that the whole top of this body is acting like a rock surface, and all of the body of the creature sinks down in mud. Okay, so you can see the side view up here just looks like a root poking up. So the top of the body is flat, and then the creature is underneath. And then this is a close-up of what the head looks like. So it's a pretty vicious little thing. It's an ambusher, it's aggressive, and it's methodical. So I wanted to give myself these notes so that if I had to display this in a portfolio, I can show it, and also answer any questions that people may have, including questions that I may have if I want to come back to the design. All right, so these 2 soldiers here, did you hear something? And this guy's like, nah, dude, chill. So you can see here, these shapes are not rocks. They're about to get torn apart, and they don't even know it. They're about to get dragged underneath the swampy mud, and adios. All right, so I gave myself some notes on this one too. Extremely strong, bony plates. Okay, and then to add to the ambusher, aggressive, and methodical, down here I put, if I get that out of the light shine, carnivore, hunts in packs, extremely territorial, lives in marshlands. Okay, and then there's not a lot of body parts to this creature, but there is a hooking claw for prey. Okay, and then here's the 2 dudes again. Are you hungry? It's like, yeah, let's wait for the others. So here's all the faces, or the heads of the creatures, and they're about to ambush them. All right. And then some other things about creature design. So if you don't want to suck at creature design, always be on the lookout for new types of animals that you can mix to form new species. So let me give you an example over here. So look at these heads. Okay, I was designing this hell ant. It was for a Creature of the Week contest. And I started looking at fire ants. I started looking at leafcutter ants. Just really cool stuff. And then asking myself, hey, how can I make it deadly looking? And this is just experimentation, folks. You know, sometimes you're going to have a whole page like this. You're not going to get good at creature design unless you allow yourself to do this. You got to allow yourself to fail. You have to allow yourself to explore and experiment and just tell yourself, hey, not everything I put down is going to be pretty. Okay, but you're not going to get to the pretty stuff until you start to go through different iterations of things that may work and things that might not work. The other cool thing about this type of method is you'll find little bits and pieces of different designs that you've done on the page that you can combine also. So not only is each head a combination of animals, you're combining those too. So it's endless. Okay, I'll show you another example. I think I've done this in my sketchbook flip through, but I want to talk more through it. This creature is called the Charney Scarn, and very, very tall. It's peaceful. It just likes to eat, plants and foliage and such. I gave myself a lot of notes on this because I was really intrigued by this creature. For example, up here, the nostril antennas locate the direction of specific scents. Nostrils can pinpoint scents up to 10 miles away. So this thing can smell like nothing. Omnivore, territorial, aggressive if provoked. So just don't mess with it and you're fine. And then these up here, retractable feathers for territorial control. So as soon as something comes into its territory, you better believe it's going to pop up and say, hey, nope, get out. All right, and I gave myself some notes down here too. Hard bony plates protecting fragile legs. So these legs are definitely fragile. It needs these bony plates. Okay, the other thing about why your creatures might suck is that you keep designing the same hands and feet. Okay, so this is probably one of my favorite hands that I've invented, and this was actually by accident. I was looking at some leaves for reference, and I was like, you know what if I just make that leaf and just put some appendages on the side for hands, and lo and behold, this thing came up. So think about your creatures and what type of environment they live in. A lot of people, aspiring concept artists, will just draw stuff for their portfolio and there's no point to it whatsoever. They just hope to illustrate something. It doesn't have a name, it doesn't have a story, there's no project attached to it, there's no multiple images to show how you got to that end result. Speaking of that, a little side note. If you're an aspiring concept artist and you want to get hired, tell us how you got to it. Don't only show us what you got to at the end, because nobody gives a crap about that. They want to know what your brain looks like on paper so that if they hire you, they're going to know how you think. And if you come to the same conclusions doing the stuff that they need you to do. So always remember that. But I remember just doing some leaf sketches and go, you know what? This thing looks like it lives in the environment that I drew it for. So that's another thing that I teach in my creature design workshops and online, my mentorships is, hey, does it look like it can actually survive? And give it functions so that it can survive in the environment that you're choosing. Another example. All right, this one's called Douglas Firs. I looked at Rick Moranis from Ghostbusters because I loved his face, but I just named them Douglas Firs. This is another example, just some more creatures. This thing's pretty vicious. More notes. Here, these are some trees, some foliage. I haven't used these for anything ever, but this was just me putting my thinking out because I needed to, get these shapes out to maybe give me a better idea for something like this. All right. So I just want to tell you guys real quick, if you're interested in being mentored, please contact me at bobbyrebholtz@gmail.com. And mentorships are on a rolling basis. I'll give you all the information that you need. I also teach an online course for CGMA called Creature Design for Film and Games. Okay, so early sign up period is now, and we are starting in January if you're interested in that. All right, so let's go back. I don't remember what I got in here. Oh yeah, more scribbles. See? Scribbling. I had no idea what was happening with that. And in this one, this is more of a pure illustration. Now, I did a lot of different thumbnails for this one on another page, but I definitely wanted a Dungeons and Dragons type warrior. Okay, so I, exaggerated some of the anatomy, but ultimately I wanted something more humanoid, definitely believable. Okay, and the other thing is, if you're doing humanoid creatures, please know anatomy of an actual human so that you can get away with doing things like this, from the deltoid, the pectoral region, the obliques. You can kind of change some stuff up a little bit. The other thing is, if you find that your creature designs always suck, look at the posing. Okay, look at how exaggerated this pose is. Contrapposto. Okay, the neck's coming straight out. It's not standing straight up like it's a constipated alien. Okay, we got this foot holding its leg back. It's stepping forward with this leg. This far arm is curled up. This one is out. The hands are not stiff, turning its hands slightly. Okay, so you want to give the sense that your creatures are moving. Okay, so I hope that you liked today's lesson. This was more of a pep talk than anything, so please comment below if you're having trouble with your creature designs and character designs. Also, if you're interested in furthering your, just knowledge in general and you want to join our Discord, that would be great. Check out the links in the description below. And we have a huge community. It's 5,500 members, I believe now. I don't know. Maybe it's at 6,000. It just keeps going. But that's a vanity metric. The point is, we have a ton of contests that we do on there, critiques. You can show your cat pics. There's a huge reference cache for people that want to study robots and share their knowledge of art. All right, so thank you all for tuning in. I hope that you found today's lesson good. I know it's super blunt, so if you're watching this right now and your creature designs absolutely suck and you can't figure out why, I think I just told you. All right, so try these methods, scribble, watch my other videos where I show you firsthand how I do my thumbnail sketching, how I relax my brain, my hand, and just let the shapes flow so that maybe some shapes can come out on your paper and you're going to be proud about it. All right. Thanks for stopping by. Peace. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the importance of anatomy when it comes to creature design. Now this is something that I heavily stress in all of my creature design lessons, both being mentoring and also my online creature design course. As you see here, there are two different skull sketches. Now this is a creature that it's massive, absolutely massive. So I looked at reference from iguanas, elephants, maybe some birds, and then if you stick around, after I'm done talking about the skull and the structure, I will show you the finished result of what the fleshed out version of the creature looks like. But before that, I need to get into the importance of all of the different bone structures you see here. So when it comes to creature design, especially if it's multi-eyeballed, you have to study the skulls when it comes to the eye sockets and making sure that there's enough space in between each socket so that the eyeball, the organ, can actually comfortably sit in there. The bottom here is called the eugule, and the back of the eye socket, you have the postorbital, and then up top here you have the frontal, prefrontal, and then right in the front here is the lacrimal. So all of those different spots for the eyeball, you have to give a space in between for the next eye. And this, yeah, you could probably consider it a cheek, but it's not really a cheek. Back here, it's the squamosal. The same thing could be said right here. So you have the eugule running across the front. This is the eugule, this is the eugule. Now a lot of times you'll have a mistake made where artists will draw an eyeball and then they'll just draw an eyeball right up next to that one. It is fun, yes. I've done this tons of times, especially if you're doing like a spider-like creature. You know, in your mind, in my mind, in our minds as artists, we don't really care about what the eye socket looks like. However, coming from a concept artist's background and knowing what happens behind the scenes, especially in visual effects and animation and sculpting, somebody's got to sculpt that. And if they can't get those parts to move correctly, then you're going to have to redesign it. So anybody could just draw a bunch of circles together and put eyeballs together and say, hey, that's an alien head. Yes, but what does the bone structure look like in between each eyeball? All right, because you can't just plop that down on a creature face and go, okay, I'm done. You have to give it function and you have to give it a way to be believable. The biggest thing that I stress is knowing what the skull looks like underneath. I would venture to say that the skull is even more important than the flesh that you put on top of the bone structure. And by the way, these are separate drawings too. So I will show you the finished drawing with the skin. And these skulls were drawn before that version, just so I can understand what's going on underneath the scales and, you know, the teeth and the wrinkles and everything. And as you can see here, I have this, it's right side finished. Okay, the front view of this one. And then what I'm doing is I'm just filling in the gaps and showing you how I would put the details in, just like I have over here. All right, and I'm laying down a very thin layer of values in multiple directions. So I think this is direction number 3, I believe. It's very light though, because you still want to catch some highlights and you want to take advantage of the tone of the paper. I'm using moleskin and I'm drawing with a 4B pencil, just so you know, because somebody always asks me that. Okay, so I'm just going to put some shadow inside the socket. In here, this is called the interorbital septum. And multiple animals have similar bone structures. Optic nerves and everything will travel to the brain through those holes back there. Up front here, you can see in the nasal region, you have the nasal. All of this in the front is the premaxilla. Okay, so just, I know I'm throwing a bunch of terms out at you, but it's better that you study those terms. Study the skulls of birds and mammals and reptiles so you know what you're going to draw as far as structure and how you're going to draw them. Okay, so you can see here that I'm looking at the shadows over here and I'm making sure that I put that in on this side too. I already have that nice coating of value underneath it, so I don't need to worry too much about the detail. The great thing about skulls, one, they're just awesome. Like drawing bones is awesome. They're probably even more awesome than creatures with skin on them because they're so creepy, and yet there's just this awesome fascination with how things are built underneath, the infrastructure. I probably need to darken the teeth too. It's right around where they grow into the skull. There we go, right like that. Okay, and then this part over here, this is all the ugle. There we go, putting some shadows in, like this. Also, drawing bones helps you with your overall anatomy and knowing where the muscles go to. Because studying muscles, while it's different because, you know, muscles, it's a tissue and it's not a bone, they have to attach to the bone. Everything starts with the skulls and the vertebrae and all that. So I would say this drawing up here probably took about 3 hours, and then this one probably took about 2, roughly. So now I want to show you what happens when you figure out all of the bone structure and you do multiple views so you know your creature in and out. Let's take a look at the final result. Okay, so what you have here is the finished result, and this is after studying different bone structures like elephants and the bigger mammals, hippos, monitor lizards. There's a lot of reptilian influence in this and a little bit of bird also. What I'm trying to get at with this is all of the muscles that you see, all of the different details and the wrinkles and the hair, the spikes and everything, that all comes later after you know what the structure is underneath this. Okay, so if you look in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you will see the bone structure and the skull and all of the different spacings that I was showing you with the skull and also the eye sockets and everything. So then we know where to put the fat tissue, the muscles, we know where to hang the jaw skin down and the throat skin, and then yeah, it all comes together like this. So now that we have a close-up of this, you can see that across here, this really smooth value, the textured look is from a black Prismacolor pencil, and then it's mixed in with my 4B pencil, and those are the only two pencils that I used. If I remember correctly, I believe I went 8 to 10 passes in different directions across everything, just shading until I got what I wanted. But you can see that all of the protruding shapes, all of the spikes coming out, knowing where these ridges go on the head, that was all determined by doing the skull sketches first. For you creature designers out there that can't figure out why your anatomy is off, it's because you're making up too much of it. You need to study what is out there in the real world, even if you have to manipulate some of the shapes that exist already. That's okay, that's part of creature design. Not everything about your creatures is going to be 100% made up. It's just not. Okay, we have to base it in reality. We have to have some form of frame of reference so that we can resonate with it as the viewer, and it becomes a more successful design altogether. I hope this lesson helped. This was more of a lecture than anything, but if you want more lessons on me physically shading these drawings, please check out my previous videos and my creature design playlist, as well as my drawing playlist too. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in to this one, and there is a drawing coming up where I'm going to be spending about 5 or 6 hours on it, and I'm not going to edit any of that out, so that's going to be a fun one. I've had too many people request they want to see me do a 5 to 6 hour drawing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to record it, and it's going to be 5 to 6 hours long. That's going to be a big memory card. I need to go get one. But anyway, thanks everyone. Peace. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So what we have in front of us is a Jackson's chameleon, or better known as a three-horned chameleon. No, they do not make good pets. They actually make horrible pets, so please don't purchase one. They don't really live that long. They live probably like 5 to 10 years if they're in captivity. I'm not really sure how long they live in nature, but I've heard some pretty bad horror stories from them. But anyway, that's besides the point. The point I'm making is I'm going to teach you how I achieved all of this scaly texture here. So those of you that have just started out in drawing and you're probably going, what in the heck? There's no way I can layer all of that on. I can't even draw a cube. Well, rest assured, I'm going to be going over this step by step. Step number 1, I'm going to apply a very thin and light coating of graphite in a minimum of 3 different directions. This is going to cover the area where I'm eventually going to put texture. This is, I shouldn't say flaw, but this is mistake number 1 that a lot of beginner artists have, where if they want to get into details like the scales or fur or wrinkles or whatever, they'll draw the scales and the wrinkles first, they'll jump right into it, and then have to shade in between the details. Well, there's a way around that that is going to greatly diminish the time spent on these, and that is if you layer the foundation on first, and then when you put details on top of that foundation, everything is already shaded for you in between all of the details. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm starting to turn my sketchbook around in different angles, but I'm keeping my hand at the exact same angle while I draw. So this is something that I mention in a lot of videos, where each individual person has a specific angle for their arms that they draw the best lines with. All right? Not every 2 people are the same on this planet when it comes to drawing. We all have our little nuances of how we hold our pencil and how we like to sit up and how we like to bend our arms, etc. So find that comfort zone when it comes to the pencil strokes. And then that way you can have the sketchbook do the work for you. All right. Now, I've probably hit this maybe 4 passes. I kind of lost count here as I was talking to you. You can see the very light cross hatching, and then as everything starts to bleed together, I'm just going to press a little harder, and now we're starting to get a nice coating. So no matter where I start putting details in, it's going to take care of itself. I think I'm going to apply just a little bit more shading down here at the bottom of the throat. I won't call it a gullet. There we go. Okay, so once we have that, and I'm keeping the strokes close together so it's nice and smooth, I'm going to go back, hit it at the same angle. Now, another secret, I shouldn't say secret really, I mean, you're watching it on YouTube now, but another tip is when you shade an area, make sure that you shade from start to finish at the same angle, and then you turn to a new angle. Because what happens is, if you start to shade and it's looking decent, and then you lift up, and then you turn it slightly, and then continue in another direction, you're pressing over what you previously shaded. It creates a darker divot right there. Then you're at the mercy of, well, I guess I got to push harder now to even out all that graphite. And then you make that area darker. And it's a snowball effect, so you want to be careful with it. Okay, so, oh, by the way, I don't think you see the whole face. There's the horn. Okay, where was I? Ah, yes. So this is probably enough passes, but I'm going to start again over here in the throat area where I had previously illustrated, and I'm just going to take this out. Haven't really decided yet where I want to put new scales. But see how my pencil strokes are going quick, they're going swift, and I'm not stopping until I get to this open area where the regular paper is. Now, by the way, I have, the chime just went off on my phone. I have a sharp pencil. All right, that's key. If you want good details and you want good line work, good quality, dull pencils make dull drawings. Always remember that. Clean pencils, or sharp pencils, make sharp lines. Just remember that too. Now, I'm going to continue these wrinkles. Let's see if we can get a shape in here. This side of the neck is going to be pretty flat. So, I'm just going to place little circles not over top of each other. I'm going to place them next to each other, and I'm going to change some of the sizes. What this does is it adds variety, and it also adds asymmetry. As beautiful as nature is, and as symmetrical as it can be, one of the great things about scales, like on reptiles and whatever else has scales, is that it looks unified from afar, and then you look up close and you're just going, man, those are thousands upon thousands of crazy little markings and scars and scale shapes. It's quite beautiful. A rule of thumb when applying scales to your creatures, if you're doing dinosaurs or whatever, if there's a lot of wrinkles around, or if there's a joint, so for example, at the end of this mouth slit, okay, you got your bottom jaw here, you got the top of the jaw here, the scales are going to be smaller. The reason is because the smaller the scales in an area, the more flexible the skin is. If it's larger, then that skin is stiffer. Notice how the scales along the lips are larger because those lips don't need to move nearly as much as the joint opening and closing. All right, so just remember that. Now as we start covering these areas, I'm holding the pencil like this, and I'm pressing not completely vertically, but at a 45-degree angle down, so I'm still using the very sharp tip that I have. I'm just going over the area where I know the scales need to be the smallest. And I'm placing small circles or ovals next to each other. They're not perfect circles. And they're pretty tiny right here, right around that mouth area. And then as they move up the neck, that's when I'm going to start getting a little bit darker. The other cool thing about, one, adding the value layer first, with the shading that I did, it takes care of everything in between the scales too. Isn't that great? So you don't have to shade over them necessarily at the beginning. But also, if you darken little areas in between the scales, it adds depth. It's almost as if the scales are popping off of the body and the light is casting shadows from each individual scale back down onto the neck or whatever area you're putting scales in. Now, I'm not saying that you have to take your pencil and outline the entire scale dark, not unless the scale is like really big. You don't have to do that. But it adds just really cool variety. You'll see this wall of shading that I had stopped. That's okay. The really black textured lines in here, that's from a black Prismacolor pencil that I have right here. So I just have it right off to the side. And I might be using that, but I just want to show you guys how to layer on scales here. So now I'm making them bigger as I move up the neck, but I'm going to stop at the end of the original area that I shaded. Okay, now in here it can get kind of, not daunting, but meticulous, I guess you could say. I'm putting very tiny scales in here, just circular motions, and I'm following a wrinkle that I had previously put. Okay, and a lot of times when you start layering these areas up, you're going to start creating really cool scars and wrinkles that you didn't know you could. Like, for example, this little bit that I just put in here in this area that I'm circling, I put a dark line across here. It was a wrinkle that I didn't mean to put, but the scale shaped it for me. So now it looks like there's a vein coming off of there. And that's what's cool about it. I looked at probably 5 or 6 photographs for reference before I drew this chameleon, and none of them had a particular vein or wrinkle coming off there. But that's just like a happy accident or something cool that can happen when you layer correctly. So I'm going to darken this just a little bit more around there because these scales are quite large. So I'm assuming that these are just going to pop off a little bit more. And then maybe the wrinkle that is, I guess, circling around the back of that mouth slit, they can be a little darker too. All right, cool. Okay, and then what you can do is if you're satisfied with all of these scales, you can then take your pencil and lightly shade on areas where if there's an underlying muscle under everything, like say the scales need to be rounded around the neck, you can then start putting in a slight coarse shadow down the entire neck. That's the other great thing about shading under all these scales, is that it takes care of itself before you start putting the details down. So something that I want to explain to everybody, especially if you're just learning sketching and you want to learn the basics and you may think that this is too intimidating, it's too much to handle. I want you to know that if you just concentrate on layering and patience, you can build up to a drawing like this. I think what's most intimidating when you see other artists do stuff super detailed and they have years of experience is that you almost feel obligated, like you have to jump into that skill level right away, and I'm here to say you absolutely do not. It's all about texturing and layering. And once you build up the skills to texture and the patience, you'd be surprised at what you can accomplish, even if you're a super noob. Like, let's say that you haven't drawn in years or maybe ever. Like, stick figures are your accomplishment. That's totally fine because we all have to start somewhere. And when you look at something like this, look at on the outside of the face right here, what you can start with. And then once you layer, you can move into more details and really accomplish something awesome. All right, so now I just want to show you the power of the black Prismacolor. Keep these sharp too, and then what you can do is define some pretty powerful wrinkles or defined wrinkles in here. You know, like for example, underneath this mouth slit, I'm going to use small circles. The reason I like using tiny little circles around my shading and around my details is because the circular motion goes back over areas that I missed, and then it creates new ones as it goes up. And then when I treat it like a row of spirals, so for example, like let's say I want to shade this under the throat, I'll do oval, 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 and I'll start moving to the right. So as I move forward, it creates new shading. As I move backwards, it fills areas that I previously missed, and then I go back over. So it's much easier than just going straight lines. Plus it looks better. So then you can take the black Prismacolor, put it down, and then take your graphite, and then you can start shading at different angles over top of that graphite. Now imagine all of the things that you can accomplish if your scales were already drawn. Hence why there's so much depth happening in this face right here. So everything that I explained over here, you can see come to fruition over here. You have your large scales, which are outlined darker. You have your tinier scales, and I shaded on top of it, just like I showed you here. And then the wrinkles in here where I added some darker lines of the black Prismacolor. And then of course, under here you don't really need to see a lot of details because it's in shadow, and that's not important. The important thing about this image is that we're showing off the horns because it's a Jackson's chameleon, and we're showing off the eyeballs because chameleon eyeballs are some of the most amazing eyes in all of the animal kingdom. They're just incredible, and they're so cool. There's a lot of character in them. They're just really, really great. I love nature, and you can see why I love creature design, and hopefully those of you watching, if you've never drawn creatures and you're not even, remotely enthusiastic about becoming a creature designer, hopefully you can at least see the beauty of drawing animals and drawing things like this. But anyway, let's say you have an open area like this and you're not really sure what the scales are going to look like. Well, let's hit this in a different direction. I'm holding the pencil like this, by the way. So I'm keeping my fingers at about 1/3 of the way down, okay? And the butt of the pencil is resting right in between my pointer finger and my thumb. So it's right off of the screen. And now I'm just going to go back and forth very slowly and also deliberately. I don't want to stop until I cover this entire area. This is very lightly drawn. And then I might actually go backwards. It's comfortable shading like this because I don't have to shade a large area where I have to control my entire arm. So this is one of the fun things about it. Okay, and then I'll just hit it at another angle. Okay, and then let's have a little bit of fun with that area. Let's say there's a big scale there. All right, there we go. You can probably hear some sirens in the background. It's like every time I record, there's got to be some sirens. I might as well turn my camera off. Be back in a second. And I'm back. Okay, so here I'm just putting in a large scale, and I'm just putting in some medium-sized ones around it, and then some smaller ones as I come down to the side here. Nothing special. I just want to show you guys what you can achieve if you just simply put in that layering again. So I'm going to do the same thing I did in this area, and then I'm going to put it over up here. Okay, I'm going to stop right here, and then I'll just get tinier as I move towards that eyeball, like really tiny, to the point where I probably won't add any more scales, because that skin needs to be, I don't even have the right word for it. There's a lot of wrinkles in there, probably because the chameleon's old. Okay, now, since this is a large scale right here, we'll just put in a little bit of a dark area in each little crevice where the new scales meet the big one, like little dots, and we'll kind of just follow the edge of the scale. And what this does is it adds depth. I'm not going to do it on all of them, just that big one. So now it can look like this big one is going to come at us. And you can even add some extra texture on it, like another little wall. Because these scales aren't perfectly flat. You can see here on the lips how there's a little light catcher at the top of the scales, because it looks like it comes to a point, like a little wall, and then it starts to fold back under on itself. So if you found this lesson helpful today, comment below. Let me know what you're working on, and let me know if you're stopping in for the first time. I welcome everybody. All ages, all backgrounds. Join our Discord if you want to show off your work or if you want to learn how to draw. If you got a lot of reference to give, if you want to partake in our monthly creature design contests, they're a lot of fun. They're based on briefs that we just make up, and the winners basically have bragging rights. It's just for fun. And also, I teach creature design for film and games at the Computer Graphics Master Academy. So check the links in the description and the pinned comment for that. I'm currently teaching winter term now, and then spring term starts April. And people are already signing up. So the spots are limited. Make sure you take advantage of that one. And then last but not least, I do run a mentorship. So I teach people of all skill levels on how to be better artists, whether or not you're a hobbyist. You don't have to have any skill level to join the mentorship. You can be an industry veteran wanting to touch up on your foundation skills, or just wanting to learn how to draw thumbnails or even world build. So just let me know. Okay, I want to thank everybody for watching me. Hopefully you liked the lesson and you got something out of it. So leave a comment, and until next time, peace. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about what your sketchbook says about you. And this can go a lot of ways, really. There's many different aspects to our sketchbook. Everybody's is different. What we draw, what we want to keep secret, what we want to show off, and above all, our creative processes are all captured right here on paper. So my last video I was talking about what do you do when you want to overcome the fear of a blank canvas. And I got into some aspects about that. And then of course, as is almost every video I talk about, there's always some kind of psychological effect when we draw. Okay, everybody draws differently, and we all think differently. Sometimes we draw scary stuff, sometimes we draw light and funny stuff. I can't tell you how many comments I get from self-righteous people telling me that I shouldn't be drawing demons because it's a gateway into my soul. I just have to chuckle at that. When I draw creepy, scary things, that's what goes in my sketchbook. That's what I think. Everybody listening right now, you all draw something or things that make you happy in your sketchbook. And that's totally fine because, let's face it, sketching is an outlet. Okay, regardless of what you do in life. If you need a stress reliever, you go to the gym, you can run, play video games, whatever. For me, it was always drawing. Of course, I love all the other stuff too. But when it comes to art and drawing, I don't know. It's just a really good motivator for me. Relaxes my mind. Just allows me to kind of escape. So when we talk about our feelings and what we have going on in our lives and everything, and then our outlet being the sketchbook, this is where the magic happens. Your sketchbook. Okay, it's where we can tap into our creative subconscious and uncover new ideas and inspiration. So, for example, you can reignite your passion for art if you haven't done it in a while. That's one thing. If you've lost that spark in your creativity, you can definitely get it back just by looking at old sketchbooks. Raise your hand if you used to draw before and you stopped, and you know that there are some sketches just stashed away in your closet, under your bed, in your drawer, whatever, and you want to get back to them, but you just can't find that spark to get back to them. You really need to uncover a new source of inspiration. And sometimes taking a step away is okay. And then you come back to it. All right. Sketches are not perfect, and that's okay. All right. Everybody's personality comes out in their sketches, regardless of what it is. And there's many different ways to find somebody's personality in their drawings too. You ever look at somebody and you think they're quiet, and then they draw stuff that's totally bonkers and off the wall, like superheroes bouncing everywhere. It's a lot of fun. When we dive deeper into our sketchbooks, we'll start to uncover all sorts of hidden gems, like forgotten sketches that still hold a spark of inspiration. Like, that's always a thing. So what I'm doing now, I'm using 4B pencil, and then I'm using a black Prismacolor, and that's it. So you can see the different darker texture I got going on here. So you'll have like blacks, and then you have graphite mixed in with it. So this is what I do. This is my shading technique. I'll go in a direction like this. I'll keep the strokes close together, so everything's very soft. And by doing so, it allows me to not push hard. I'm holding my pencil way back here. I also have a trusty piece of paper. Usually I don't use paper. In this instance, I do. This is a very large sketchbook from Moleskine. I don't even remember the size, but I believe it's 18 by 24. It's a big sketchbook. I'm a little pickier when it comes to these big illustrations. So I'll just turn the direction like this, keep the strokes close together. And I've been drawing on this for the past couple days already, and I just wanted to jump right into this to show you guys. This entire area right here, the creature's torso and shoulder and trapezius muscles, it already has about 5 or 6 different passes. And then what I do is I take my black Prismacolor and then I go over the pencil. No, these are not black Verithin pencils. These are black Prismacolor, the actual colored pencil. There we go. So when you do that enough, it adds its own skin texture to it. It's really nice. It doesn't really, well, it does matter how toothy the paper is, but the smoother the better, so you can get smooth shading. A lot of people are worried about their shading ability. It's just because the paper you're drawing on is not good, or it's not meant to have smooth shading on it. That's why you got to rely on your fingers to smudge it, and that's not shading anyway. Well, it is. I shouldn't say that, but you're not going to learn proper shading if you just take that route, because you got to learn how to blend the values together. All right, see what this does is it allows me to have a nice coating of graphite on the base of the skin and then do wrinkles on top. So then I don't have to go back in and shade in between each wrinkle to make it even. It's already even. So just remember that. If you're wondering what the heck I'm actually drawing, this is a creature for my personal project Ecor 117. I started this about 6-7 years ago. It's a fictitious planet, and there's a bunch of creatures and crazy hostile areas on the planet, and humans go to it because they want to prolong their life due to a plant source that they found. And lo and behold, there are creatures on this planet that do not want humans there. So think of Pandora and Avatar times 50. It's way more violent in Ecor 117. Okay, so to dive deeper into what we're talking about today, what your sketchbook says about you. All right, so let's get into that. Think about your daily lives. Think about what excites you. Think about what angers you, what you have written in your diary that nobody else knows about, your journal, whatever it is. A lot of times your sketchbooks can be the same thing. And it's a great, like I mentioned before, it's a great outlet, an energy outlet. When I go to the gym about 5-6 days a week. And it's a wonderful stress reliever. When I wake up in the morning, so I wake up about 5:30 in the morning, no later than 5:30. First thing I do is draw. I just jump right to it. And for me, it helps me wake up. It's like my coffee, okay? Because I'm weird. I don't like coffee. I hate it. So this is like my coffee. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm actually going back over the black Prismacolor with the graphite. So what this does is I'm marrying these two together, and it really offers a nice smoothness throughout. That's definitely what I want. You can be very, very consumed by the hustle and bustle of daily life. Our sketchbooks become so much more to us. It's like It's like our windows to our soul. And I know it's so cliche to say that. It's kind of cheesy. I'm not trying to be cheesy. But it's true. It's like looking into somebody's eyes. They're windows to our soul. Well, the same thing happens with creatures. They really are. Or not creatures, but sketchbooks. Creatures too, yes. You can see where my mind is right now. Also, they're doing some more construction. They're building a massive, or renovating a massive hotel turned apartment complex really close. So a lot of the videos I've been filming the past couple months, you probably heard the beeping in the background. It's kind of, it's not annoying because it's far enough away, but you can definitely tell it's there. All right, so these little holes in the neck are acting as filter holes for the creature. So in case it has to breathe in a certain amount of oxygen or whatever is on the planet that it is from. This is the neck part is very, very important to the creature. I got to make sure I indicate where those openings are on the other side. Also, you'll notice the camera has been slightly turned in a different angle due to two reasons. One, I broke my tripod, so one of the legs has snapped in half. So I literally have to perch one of the legs of the tripod up on my desk. And then on top of that, this is a huge sketchbook. So I'm kind of at the mercy of having the camera farther away and pointing down here. That's why this face is at such a crazy angle. Hopefully you don't mind it. But you can see all the different intricacies I've been putting in my creature now. All right. So the other thing I want to talk about when it comes to what your sketchbook says about you, you can tell about somebody's organizational skills, dedication, and your tenacity. For me, I've always been very detail oriented, so I obsess about details about certain things. So I call it, I don't know, I didn't die. Probably a self-diagnosis, maybe a little bit OCD. I don't know, but that's just me. It took me years to overcome the need to put details in everything. So you'll notice now that I kind of leave some areas ambiguous. Of course, I'm going to do the entire body. I might do a part 2 of this. I'm not sure. Usually, I will have all of you comment below and try to name the creature. The name is up to me this time. I'm very picky about my personal project and the names I give it. Any other creature, yeah, I would definitely let you do it. But this time around, I hope you all don't mind. I'm going to do the name for this one. Maybe some smaller critters for my project. You can definitely find out. And while I'm filming this video, there's several things I want to talk about that I'm pretty excited about. One, I am going to be working on a new book. Okay, so, but I just want to warn you, it's not going to come out this year. Okay, I still got a lot of stuff to do, but it's based on my personal project, eCore 117. There's a lot of things that I learned based on the first Kickstarter that I successfully funded back in 2016. I get asked all the time where that book is, and unfortunately, the original allotment to give to my backers, obviously those were sent out, and then the leftovers I sold on my Etsy account, which is, that's closed. I don't have that anymore. So I don't have that book anymore. I do have a PDF of that book. It's called Subconscious Sketches from a Dark Place. It's very dark fantasy oriented, sprinkled in with a little bit of colored sketches. If you're interested in purchasing that PDF, you can do that. If you look at my channel's store, which is easy to find, if you visit my channel's front page before you go into any videos, you'll see the store link right there. It's at Fourth Wall. You can get the PDF there, and then the next book that'll be coming out is on eCore 117. And it's going to be a big project, big one. I'm going to need help. It's not just going to be me like it was for the Kickstarter. I'm going to do a trailer, I'm going to do animations, I'm going to do all that fun stuff. That's the plan, but I'm going to put it into fruition. Okay, there needs to be a cast shadow because of that big gnarly airway tube going down the neck. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking my black Prismacolor and I am ever so gently placing in oval shaped shadows, and I'm overlapping them so that there's going to be a cast shadow on the neck. Notice how the core shadow is showing up and the cast shadow is also showing up. So then what I can do is then I could push a little darker right in here for some wrinkles. Because in between those wrinkles where the skin flaps are, that's where the least amount of light is placed and existing. So that's how you know that you can get darker in that area. I really hope that these lessons help you all too. I try to go into as much detail as I can while making it easy to understand. I've been a teacher for over 12 years now. I've taught at university, I've taught online, I run mentorships, I do workshops, and I listen. I listen to a lot of students and what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So I try to shape all my lessons around what works the best and the fastest. Also, this type of sketch, this one, it just takes patience, folks. It takes patience. This right here, all of this in the head and some of the torso, like the shoulder and everything, this is probably about 5 hours worth of work. I didn't do this in one sitting, but it's probably about 5 hours, maybe 6 tops. Okay, so when it comes to our sketchbooks and what it says about us, I think that a lot of people don't hold their sketchbooks to a high regard like they should. Mainly because people tend to be very passive on the stuff that they doodle, and they don't really think that it holds a lot of significance because they're not fully finished illustrated pieces. And I'm going to argue that the quick, dirty, gritty stuff is actually more attractive and more thought-provoking, because I want to jump into that real quick. So let's say that you're doing a thumbnail. Okay, definitely not this, but let's say you're doing a thumbnail and it's pretty rough, and I've gone over this before. If you hold that one thumbnail up that you did in your sketchbook to a group of 50 people, you are going to get 50 different interpretations of that. So think about all of the ideas and the possibilities that can jump off of that one thumbnail. Now imagine if your sketchbooks were full of thumbnails like that. You have a treasure trove of ideas and you don't give yourself credit for it. So if you're drawing along with me now, if you're just doodling or if you're just listening to me talk, I want you to look at your most recent sketch and ask yourself, is this thought-provoking? Am I going to want to come back to it? If you say no, allow yourself to say no, but don't ruin that drawing by crossing it out, erasing it, scratching it, and worst of all, and I've done this, rip the darn thing out of the sketchbook. Don't do that. Keep it there. It's like, Coach Krzyzewski, when he coached Duke basketball, he would always say, we're not moving on from this loss right now. We want to really think about this loss so we remember it. All right, so think about your lives. Think about all of your trials and tribulations that you can't forget but have shaped who you are now. Same thing happens with a sketchbook. You can have a brand new sketchbook full of beautiful white paper, okay, like you're ready to go. And then all of a sudden you start drawing on page number 1, and what do? You think you screw up. What do you do after you screw up? You cross it out, you erase it, or you tear it up and then you start over. Don't tear that up. Keep that there as a reminder and then move on to the next sketch. It's kind of like when you get a whole library of thumbnails in, and of like 50 thumbnails or whatever, maybe 49 of them aren't good, and then the 50th one you finally got to it. It's a journey that you go on. You wouldn't have been able to get to that 50th one had you not done all of that other stuff. All right, so the same thing happens with all of your sketchbooks right now. There we go. Okay. We also might fill our sketchbooks up pretty quickly, and we just stash them away on a shelf. They're just somewhere. You don't even know where they are. You know, we might be too intimidated to share them with others, fearing that our rough, undefined ideas won't be good enough. Well, good enough for what? Good enough for who? Somebody else's opinion? You know art is subjective. But I'm telling you right away, the rough stuff and the stuff that you think is ugly, that still came from your heart. And a lot of times, people will, or that artwork will resonate more than, you know, a super polished piece that is cliche and that everybody was expecting to be done. That's the thing. All right, it's another thing. It's fearing that it's rough, undefined ideas won't be good enough. But the truth is, you know, our sketchbooks hold a wealth of knowledge. A wealth of knowledge. Everything that you've learned up until this moment could be drawn in a sketchbook. Everything. Everything you've seen, everything you've learned, all the relationships that you've been through. That shapes who you are. So for example, it's kind of like a snowball effect. Think about movies, okay? If you are intrigued by horror movies because you like being scared, you like that feeling of fear, of course knowing that you're going to be safe afterwards, but you start drawing the things that you see because it's a release of fear. You know, it comforts you. All right, that's like a fun snowball effect. If you like cute, bubbly things, okay, what does that say about you? Are you a cute, bubbly person? Maybe. Honestly, I don't know anybody that's really mean but draws cute, bubbly things. I don't really know mean people. That's the thing. And I mean, we're all rough around the edges in some way. And the things we draw kind of reflect what we think in life. You know, the stuff that I draw, I see this in my brain when I'm sleeping. So say what you want. I don't know. Pass a judgment on me. Who knows? But these are the kind of crazy things that I see. It's pretty wild, actually. There we go. So you've seen me layer on, you know, black Prismacolor, 4B pencil, etc. I've kind of also made this an impromptu lesson in a way, because you're seeing me draw this in real time as I'm recording, so I had no real plan for this. But this is the kind of layering that I do on my really long drawings. This whole drawing, once it's said and done, because this is, you know, obviously the top half. I got front legs, I got back legs down here. I'm not going to put a lot of detail in the back legs just because of, you know, atmospheric perspective and such, but it's probably going to be about a 15-hour sketch. So to kind of go back to what I was talking about and things I want to announce, you know, like with the book that I'm going to be working on and eCore 117. I also teach creature design for film and games for the Computer Graphics Master Academy. So if you check the link in the description below, it's a seasonal classroom that I run off of CGMA. They're a wonderful company. I've been with them for 8 years now, and that course has pumped out some really awesome creature designers. Just truly remarkable what they've been doing. If you check the link in the description, the early sign-up period has already started for winter session. So the winter session starts in January. We do cap the classrooms at 20. It fills up really fast around December. So I'm just warning you all ahead of time. If you want to do winter, do it. And the great thing is it's seasonal. So if you can't make the winter one, then, you know, we have the one in spring, and then we have the one in like summer, fall. So whenever you can join and take the class, that's great. It's an 8-week course. It's a lot of fun. The description of the course, the syllabus, and everything is on their website. So I'm just really happy to announce that. If you want to get better at art because you feel like you're stuck, or if you have some creatures that you want to show, maybe something that you've been doodling lately and you need some feedback, you can join our Creature Design Workshop Discord. Our Discord is a bustling community, and if you check the link in the description, you can see that it's free to join, and we have a lot of different forums on the site for critiquing, reference gathering. We have a monthly creature challenge where I give the brief, and then you literally have 30 days to complete a challenge. And then no money is involved for whoever's a winner at the end of the month. It's more for bragging rights. It's just for fun. It's a bustling community. We are approaching 5,000 members, which is, I am so excited just to see the forum grow and people to help. And cat pics too. There are a lot of cat pics in there. Okay. This kind of texture I'm really excited about. You can start to see the roughness happen. Okay, this is remember, I was sketching this before I started filming for the past 5 or 6 days. Probably 15, 16 different passes with a graphite pencil, my 4B, and then black Prismacolor. And then I keep going and going and going. And what that does is it adds a really nice texture in there where the grooves of the paper almost add veins for me. And they add different almost scales that I can just kind of follow for little imperfections in the skin of the creature. And if I just allow that to happen, we're going to get some really neat stuff in here that I wasn't planning on getting. That's why this is so much fun. Okay, where are we at now? So I wanted to make this creature's chest a little concave. I was thinking about putting a baby in there. Almost like this is an alien version of a marsupial, with like kangaroo pouch and whatever animals on our planet have pouches for babies. But then I started thinking, what if it breathed in there somehow? I don't know. So I'm going to have to approach that very carefully and just kind of layer as I go. The clavicles, okay, are different for this creature. So obviously the pectoral region and the muscles will be attaching to the clavicles differently than it would for a regular wildebeest, a gazelle, horse, camel, pretty much any hooved quadruped that we have on our planet. To go into today's topic again, as I'm drawing and yapping away at my drawing technique, what your sketchbook says about you. So that's what we're talking about. So it's not just a tool for jotting ideas down. Okay, it's a valuable resource for self-reflection, inspiration, and above all, creativity. So if you think that you're not creative, I want you to, just to sit back a little bit and really reflect on why that is. Why do you think you're not creative? There's probably some internal conflict going on. I am not a licensed physician, psychologist, psychiatrist, anything like that. So I'm just basing this off an assumption. So, I don't have all the answers, but I can just try to help. Probably something else going on, and it's not art related, which is why it brings me back to today's sponsor for this video, BetterHelp. I really encourage you all to check out that link in the description about BetterHelp and sign up. It's great. What they do for people is just, it's really remarkable. Okay, you can see here that this whole deltoid region, I'm going to have to think about that because this creature's shoulder region is really big. You also have to think about proportions when it comes to parts of a creature. For example, this is a massive head. Okay, if you're wondering what the heck's going on here, The eyes are up here. Okay, these are the eyes. There's 4 total, so there's 2 over here, 2 over here. It has amazing eyesight. These are ears. And then the sound can reverberate to the brain through these tubes, and it can hear miles and miles and miles away. This thing's hearing is incredible. And it has to filter in the sound and everything, which is why it has all this intricate shaft on either side. All right. This creature's also a pretty tasty treat, so it has to have eyes on the top of its head so it can find enemies trying to hunt it down. Now it's a pretty massive creature. I don't know how big I want to make it, but I'm assuming it's over 10 feet tall for now, maybe even taller. So we'll see. Yeah, this needs a lot of help. Okay, so I'm not even going to bother with the shoulder much today. I'm just going to get some indication of where the muscle could be. Somewhere around there. And then I'll stop, because I don't want to go overboard. I still have to figure out this area down here and tighten up some places. Alright, so if you're struggling, comment below and let me know what you're struggling with. Join our Discord if you want some help with your artwork. If you just want some answers as to why things aren't working for you. Maybe the other artists in the community who are very helpful, maybe they can help point you in the right direction. I run a mentorship also. Now my mentorship is incredibly limited. I've had some people re-sign up for another month, past couple weeks. But if you're interested in getting better at concept art, and it doesn't matter what it is, environment, creatures, characters, I can help point you in the right direction. We can work on your presentation skills, we can work on your marketing and your portfolio building, getting a job in the industry, knowing how to find freelance, how much to charge, etc. All of it, even if you wanted one mentorship. If that interests you, please email me at bobbyrabholtz@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to set up a consultation for you and just to see what I can do to try to help. All right, so in conclusion, if you've learned something about the importance of engaging with your sketchbook, just know that it is not a tool. It's not just a tool for jotting down ideas. Okay, there is self-reflection and all of that. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I got a super fun one today. Get your sketchbooks out if you want to draw with me, if you want to do some thumbnail sketching, or if you already have a drawing and you want to add some details to it. Today's lesson is about adding those fine-tuned details. Now, I'm going to be doing a ballpoint pen, so this entire serpent head is with ballpoint pen. This part's pretty much finished on the bottom jaw. I left some area open on the top here, and then you can see the details starting to get more scarce as I move down the neck, and eventually there's barely anything here except indication of scribbles. Okay, that was on purpose, as I'll show you how to fill in certain areas. Now, people have different styles when they draw. Some people like to jump into details right away, which I do not advocate for. But others, you'll get an outline, and then you'll start to fill in. That's the way I do it. That's the way I've learned how to do it. And when I say fill in, I mean if we have an outline, so you can see the outline of the serpent's head here. If you're doing a creature, or you're doing a prop, character, whatever. You start with details on the outside, and then you work your way into the inside. For me personally, I like to do the eyeball first if I'm doing a creature, because the emotion is set. I can see what kind of facial expressions they're going to have, what kind of look that they're going to give, whether or not it's towards an enemy, towards another creature, etc. It just helps set the mood for me whenever I draw. And it's different for everyone. The other reason why I like using ballpoint pen is because you can get very dark very quickly, and a lot of the markings that you put in, they don't bleed in with the other marks, and there's no graphite to spread around. Now, my tool of choice definitely is a pencil, but when it comes to cleanliness like this, I love showing the pen. And ballpoint pen is pretty much gaining popularity. I've seen more and more people draw with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in this area over here on the serpent's fin that's growing out the side of his head. Whenever I draw with a pen, it's super light at first. There we go. I get asked quite often, how am I drawing so lightly and then all of a sudden I'm getting darker and darker, and it's just like I don't push hard. I know it's a kind of a cheeky answer, but my pinky finger is guiding my entire palm. It's just at your angle you can't see it happening just because of the way I'm filming. But I'm not resting my entire palm on the page as much as people think. It's usually up a little bit, about half an inch. And I'm grabbing the pencil in a way where it still sits lightly in my fingers. I'm not gripping it like this at the end. If you grip it at the end, it's going to force you to put in a lot of details. Okay, so as far as references and what I used for this serpent head, I looked at snakes, I looked at iguanas, monitor lizards, Gila monsters, pretty much anything with a longer snout when it comes to lizards. And then that's about 50% of it. And then the other 50% is I just made it up. I made it up, but I'm making it believable because I'm paying attention to the little areas where anatomy definitely needs to look believable. For example, the end of a jaw right here and the skin being pinched right at the neck, because that's what happens in nature. Just look at iguanas. Same thing happens with a monitor lizard if they turn their head, and you can definitely see it. All right, and then other areas such as where the ear hole is on lizards, what the membrane looks like separating the top and bottom jaw when they open their mouths, and then also this is more just fantastical creation where you have teeth coming out of the jaw on dragons and monsters and such with video games where there's no lip. You just draw the tooth coming straight out of it. You see it a lot in movies like Peter Jackson's King Kong, where you see the T-Rex. I call him Snaggletooth. Those of you that have seen it, with Naomi Watts and Adrian Brody, Jack Black, that King Kong came out in 2005, I believe, 2006, somewhere around there. The T-Rex in there has teeth, but there are no lips on it. And I know that's a huge argument now among the young paleontologists of the world about whether or not dinosaurs had lips or not. It's so much fun to read those comments. But anyway, I'm building up my pen strokes very lightly. So as I've been talking, you can see this area slowly start to fill up like this. Now I'm adding in the ribbing, followed by the very thick skin separating each ribbing. Here's the thing though, I don't want to outline each rib in here. You're probably wondering, what do you mean rib? Is that where it breathes? Like, no, this is just the fin because this is more of an aquatic serpent. You don't want to outline it because then it looks too cartoony. So that's another thing that I want to mention. I get asked quite often, how do I transition from cartoony sketches to more realistic sketches because my stuff still looks cartoony? How can you help me? And the answer is, you have to let yourself make more subtle changes in the edges of your characters and creatures so that you're not outlining as much. Cartoonists outline their drawings. So for example, the outline that I gave this one's okay because everything on the inside is realistic. If I were to outline everything in here, then it would be cartoony. And you can see it a lot in manga. Of course, manga is its own style too. But there's a lot of realism that happens in manga. But we won't get into that because their proportions aren't all that great. So now the wrinkles that are happening right here at the bottom of this fin, this is another point that you need to pay attention to with realism. So you can see how I'm just slowly starting to build up these wrinkles. See how light I'm being? But what happens is, as you start building up these lines, it forms its own texture. And then what you do is you take your ballpoint and you find the little crevices within those little marks. A lot of times the crevices just happen naturally. Whenever I drew this area right here with the skin and all the wrinkles, I wasn't thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to put one single wrinkle here and then, well, I got to put a thick one here. I'm like, no, it just happens naturally. So, let's focus on this area right here as it's coming into the neck. I'm going to look at the contours of the neck. It's going around like this. It's a cylindrical form. So that means that all of the skin is growing in that direction. Okay, now, point of realism. We have the fin, so the cartilage underneath the fin. It's attaching to the neck right here. So you can see the wrinkles moving downwards in a downward spiral. But we have the neck wrinkles that are coming in an upward spiral because that's the shape of the neck as it travels up into the back of the head. How do you make those meet? Well, that's where the realism comes in. So let's think about what happens in nature if you have two wrinkles meeting. There's typically going to be a set of smaller ones, and then all of a sudden when the skin meets, there's going to be one thick one that sits there because there's going to be an overlap. Okay, so maybe one or two that's going to overlap. Notice how I made this one a little darker. See how I'm just kind of lightly sketching on that wrinkle? If you're drawing a creature with me right now, think about how you can implement this technique in here. So that's how you meet two sets of wrinkles going in opposite directions. Try to be sporadic with the shapes of them too. Okay, another thing about drawing things realistically, like skin and scales, fur, it is orderly, but you still need to be asymmetrical with it. Try not to duplicate the exact same type of wrinkle over and over and over and over again. That's what makes your drawings boring. And that's what, like, for example, if I were to draw these skin wrinkles coming down the rest of this neck, I'm not going to draw the same one parallel to each other over and over and over again. It's boring and it's also unnatural. Okay, so now we got some wrinkles coming down this way, and then we have some wrinkles coming up the neck here. The next part that I want you to focus on is where to put the darker lines in. So I'm just going to take my pen and I'm just going to put it on the under part of this cylindrical form. Cylindrical form as in, you see the cartilage coming down? Underneath the skin is going to be hard cartilage. That's the shape of the bottom of the fin. All right, now I have to draw those lines following the contours of that cylinder. And we know that this part is underneath it. So that's why it gets a darker treatment. When you look at all of the values that I have applied with my pen, I have to make sure that I still add contrast to it. I don't want anything to blend in so much that it becomes boring and like a sea of sameness. So I'm just going to put shadows in some of these thicker wrinkles. And I'm only going to do so on the under part of this fin right here. Look how that pops now. So now I have a combination of lighter wrinkles and then a cylindrical form, and it looks like it's coming out nicely. So the reason why we've put a lot of emphasis on the wrinkles first, because if you're ever doing a creature that has a lot of little scales to it, so you can see the face up here and the head with a ton of little circles and little scale shapes, it's better to get the form down first and then think about texture being something that you paint on later. Okay, so for example, if you're a 3D artist, maybe you have Substance Painter or you're poly painting. Well, there's no point in poly painting unless you get the details on, or the form on first, and then you can put the smaller ones on. So the wrinkles are going to be larger in form than the scales. The scales should be the very, very last thing that you put on. So let's look around the skin to see where we can put some of those scales that would still make sense, because you don't want to force details on. You only allow details to enhance the design. Just remember that. So if you have a drawing where you're wanting to put in a lot of details and be like, oh man, that's going to look awesome there, think of if it really makes sense to do so. All right, so these wrinkles are so fine and so small that there's really no point for me to put in tiny little circles in an area that's already filled up by the skin. I could choose the thicker side right here and maybe indicate some scales. I've mentioned this before in one of my previous videos where I go over form and putting in details on top of form. And that is, if you're doing scales on a creature, they get tinier in areas of your creature that need to articulate the most and are most movable. What does that mean? The larger areas that don't move themselves get the larger scales. The joints and the skin around the joints that need to become malleable and move, those are the tinier parts. So for example, the eye area is going to move the most, therefore the scales are tinier. Just look at nature. You don't see huge scales next to eye sockets in any lizard. You see the bigger scales on the bigger parts of the body. The skin around the neck needs to be able to stretch and move because the head turns. It pivots, it tilts. So the scales need to be smaller so it's not as stiff. Same thing applies to doing creature work. So you can indicate where those scales are. Another reason why I love using ballpoint, because the lines are so skinny, and they can get skinny and I don't have to sharpen it. So I'm just indicating where some of these scales go. You can see it up here too. That's a larger fold, so you'll be able to see the scale in there. But let's fill this in. Like, what would I do for this? So let's think about that underlying structure first and how each of these ribs will attach. So again, I'm thinking of structure underneath this shape. This is bare. There's no details in here whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think, hey, maybe there's actually not a lot of scales on here, but more like a membrane. Okay, and yeah, we probably could put some scales on the membrane. That might be a good idea, actually. But I'm treating my pen as if it's a paintbrush. Okay, I don't want to think of the pen being some outlier, tool that I have to use. Like, oh, a pen is the only thing that's going to give me, this result. Pencils, pens, they're all paintbrushes. We're all painting here. Okay, so let's test this out. Let's see what happens. This area is full of a bunch of tiny little lightly placed lines. I'm going to put in some small circles, very lightly, right like that. And then I'm just going to fade it off to the edge. So now we can try that technique on this part of the membrane. I'm actually liking just these tiny little scribbles more than putting in scales. So I'm just going to keep it like that, but I have to keep this part light. Notice how I'm not putting any tones in the ribs that are attaching to the larger part of the fen. I'm keeping the tone of the paper. And the lines moving back here are very light, very sketchy. We don't need anything too fancy. What I am going to do though is I'm going to go to the tip of the fen and I'm just going to darken it up. So hopefully this lesson is helping you guys add some details in. It's not just with a pen. You can do this with a pencil too. And those of you that love using mechanical pencils, save your mechanical pencil for details like this in your drawing. Because that's what they're made for. They're made for details, and you can get some really, really good ones with a mechanical pencil. Okay, so now, the next part of the lesson, we're going to add some color to it. Alright, so the next part is we're going to be adding some color to our sketch. Now, this requires a little bit more concentration only because you need to be 100% certain that the sketch that you have down is what you want to end up with. Okay, now, for me being a creature artist, I'm going to rely on earth tones to color, or for me to color my creatures with. And then if I want to get something very alien or very dark fantasy or whatever, I'm going to plan accordingly before I grab my colors. So the earth tones that I'm using, plus I have a little orange here. It's very, very simple, okay? We got like a forest green, we have this yellow that shows up on flowers and nature, And then we have this one too. So this one's called light yellow ochre. All right. So let's get to it. This is going directly over the ink. Also notice how I'm going over each body part, not caring that I'm crossing the lines. So for example, I just covered the bottom jaw and I went straight up into this fin. It doesn't matter because all of this is going to be unified at some point, and you're going to have what's called a local color. So those of you that are fine art painters, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, the second bit is I'm probably going to have like a bounce light going on that bottom of the neck. Okay, now I do want to take care of this jaw area, so it's going to be green, but the green is going to happen at the top, and I'm going to flow the green down into that yellow. There we go. So you can see that the pen still shows up nicely through the colored pencil. Could I get darker with the pen after this? Yes, of course, and I'll show you how to do that. But I'm using these colors very lightly. I'm just going over the entire body. Also, it doesn't matter if you go outside of the lines, guys. Like outside of the line that you drew. That is the beauty of having something look painterly without you actually painting. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. So right around this eyeball here, I'm just going to use small little circular movements. And this yellow ochre color, ochre, it's going to be pretty prominent right in through there. Now along here, along this jawline, I think what I'll do is I'm going to put in some of that ochre color right around that jaw. That's really going to show up. And then, because it's a serpent and probably tropical, I want to find an area where I can put a stronger color, and I think up here is going to work. I think my orange just broke. Look at that. Sure did. Okay, I just fixed it. There we go. Small, tiny little circles. There, that seems to work pretty nicely around there. And I think I'm going to put it up near the eye because there's still some white paper showing through. So I'm just going to indicate it with some of that color. And I could put the orange up here on the fin too. There we go. All the details are taken care of already. This is why I don't want you to add color unless you're absolutely certain that what you have down is what you want to end up with. Now I'm going to go back over this area, put in some brown. I'm not going to add much color after this. What I am going to do is I'm going to take my pen and then I'm going to go back over some of these little crevices that may have been lost because of the colored pencil. And watch how these pop. See that area? The reason I'm putting the darker crevices on this part of the jaw and nowhere else is because it is the closest to us. It's popping off. I'm trying to convey 3D here. Okay, I'm not going back into every single little scale because I don't want to do that. Definitely the ear hole. But what this does is it adds realism, it adds form, it adds depth. And these are finishing touches, so you shouldn't even be considering doing this until your drawing is 98% done. And of course I could make this flow into the rest of the sketch too, which I eventually will. But just to recap on what we went over today, adding wrinkles, thinking about form, having a light touch with a pen, and thinking about the direction in which skin grows on top of the form. So think about the underlying bone structure and the muscles and the bigger forms before anything else, because all of the details that you're going to put in will sit on top of those forms. But if the forms are not prominent and we can't see that skeletal structure come through your drawing, it's going to look flat, and it's also not going to look believable, and you're going to wonder why your creatures look stiff and the muscles look like blobs. You were just guessing where they go. There we go. Hopefully you liked today's lesson. This was a lot of fun. I think I'm going to color more of my ink stuff. That's today's lesson, folks. Hopefully you had fun. Comment below. Let me know what you're working on. Let me know if you tried this out. Until next time. Peace.